Right, hi everyone. Welcome to this edition of Believe in Bills, presented by FanDuel. Adam Benigni and Sal Maiorana. Sal, I will always wonder when I, get you into the studio here. That's what they call it here in the software. You're in the room, man. I think a lot of people just around Western New York sort of just wonder what your vibe is in general. What is your vibe today?
My vibe on what? What are we talking about?
Oh, whatever. I mean, it's usually Yankees driven, but it's too early for that.
Yeah.
The Bills obviously dictate a lot for you, but you're kind of removed from them critically anyway.
Yeah.
The weather, how it impacts your walk, all of this.
My vibe is typically, I hope it's a good show to watch on streaming somewhere tonight. We usually find we've got them all. I mean, we've got HBO, we've got Amazon Prime, we've got Netflix, we have Hulu, we have Peacock. Netflix. I said Netflix. I don't know. We got like 5 or 6 streaming services. So my wife and I are always looking for a show to watch. So that's the vibe. What else are you gonna do in the wintertime? Right? I mean, I go out and do my walks. I get my steps in. That's how I get outdoors.
Yep.
But you gotta hunker down at night and watch TV. I don't even watch. People think I watch sports like 24/7. I hardly even watch sports. I'll watch the Yankees most nights. I've been starting to watch the Sabres because they're kind of relevant now. But otherwise, I'm not sitting at. I guarantee you, I won't watch 1 second of the NCAA tournament. I have no interest in it. I'm not going to watch it at all. So
you know what?
I'm not watching sports all the time.
Well, part of it is that you don't want to. I don't want to subject my wife.
Yeah, that too.
To what the reality of, and this isn't a complaint. I mean, these jobs are dream jobs and wonderful, but they come with this constant occupation with sports, right? And crazy hours and breaking stories that interrupt things and all of that. And so on the downtime, the last thing I'm going to do is subject her to something on the main screen in our living room.
Exactly.
So we'll do the streaming thing. Have you done Pluribus yet?
Yeah, I knew I wasn't going to like that. So I'm
anyone, and maybe look in the comments down below, anyone who's watched that, and I haven't watched the whole thing, we haven't, but I've seen enough of it to know that the main character's personality
is me.
I heard Sal.
I heard that. I've heard that.
It's uncanny, almost.
But I also know I'm not going to like the show because I've read enough about it. I was like, nah,
it's kind of way out. Yeah, it's out there.
I don't like stuff that's way out there. So
all right. And if I do watch sports,
my wife is shocking me right now. Absolutely shocking me. I have no interest in Game of Thrones. Never would have watched it in a million years. She decided a couple of weeks ago that she was going to try it. Now she's like hooked. So I can't get the TV away from her. She's watching Game of Thrones constantly, and I can't stand stuff like that. I hate all that junk. I want something that's real. So it's funny that she's watching that show.
Yeah, but you should defer to it and watch it.
I don't. I just leave the room and go read and do whatever I'm going to do. And then I come back when it's time to share the TV. Or if there's a game on, so
Yeah, if there's a game on, I come in this is my office here, and I'll flip the TV on in here and watch it. So, all right, well, there's a little bit of dose of real life to
little real life. Who we are.
Speaking of real life, and speaking of time-consuming things, you had the opportunity to sit down with Bill's GM and president of football operations. The new component of his title, of course, Brandon Beane, earlier this week. Exclusive interview for the Rochester Democrat and Chronicle. And I'm gonna start with the DJ Moore trade, but before we do that, just what was your overall take maybe on his demeanor? I mean, he's taken a lot of heat, right? Did you get into that at all, and maybe where some of the fans are coming from versus the approach he's taking and all of that? Did any of that emanate from your discussion with him?
It was kind of funny late last week. When free agency was going on. And people, actually it was mid last week when it was just the signing period was starting. And I told you, the people on Twitter are just absolutely insane, screaming and yelling that the Bills hadn't done anything. And then I got into this because I have time to kill as you're waiting for things to happen. So I'm sitting there on my computer. So I'm on Twitter. And I found myself defending Beane for 5 hours in a row. Not defending him every move he makes is great, but just people calm down, and just trying to talk people off the ledge. So I texted him. It was probably Thursday afternoon or early evening. And I said, I was kind of teasing. And I just said, I just spent half my day defending you over these wackos on Twitter. And he texted back and he goes, well, you don't have to do that, but I appreciate it. So we texted back and forth a little bit. And Saturday, I get a call, and he said, I'm going to be talking to the Buffalo News guys on Monday because they requested a sit down. And he said, why don't you come on over and I'll talk to you if you want after they're done. So I was like unsolicited. He called me up and said, hey, come on over. So that was great. So I, took advantage of it, and we sat down, went up to the Intersactum, which I'm not even sure I've been up there before, Adam, in the new facility. I mean, we went up to his office and sat down and had a great conversation for about an hour. So I got a lot out of it, a little bit off the record, but most of it on, and got a pretty good feel for what's going on. So you can fire questions at me and I can kind of share what we talked about.
All right. This is Believe in Bills, presented by FanDuel. I'm Adam Benigni of WGRZ TV and Sports Talk Live Buffalo. Sal Maiorana of the Rochester Democrat and Chronicle. Let's start off with we'll go somewhat chronologically here, not exactly, but I mean, and in order of importance and significance and focus among the fan base. Let's go back to the trade for DJ Moore, right? And a lot of questions as to whether, as an A1 receiver, he's the exact fit, the price they paid in giving up a second-round pick for him, all of that. Take me inside Beane's rationale on the player, how to deal with the contract, the term, and all of that, and again, the price that it came at.
Yeah, first of all, the player, they've liked him, and he didn't tell me this, but I think he told the news guys that he liked him coming out of that draft in 2018, the Josh Allen draft, and they couldn't do it, they couldn't get him at that point, so he liked the player for a little while. But he said, I asked him, I said, why did you not just wait to free agency and you wouldn't have to give up your second round pick? And he had a couple levels on that. He said, first of all, free agency numbers get a little bit crazy. This guy is already under contract for 3 more years at a cost. They knew what it was going to cost to bring him into the building, whereas Alec Pierce got that ridiculous contract from the Colts. So that's part of the free agency. You don't know where the price is going to go. Second of all, he said second round pick. He said, Sal, look, it's the 60th pick. It's almost the 3rd round. And there's a big difference between pick 35 is what he told me, pick 35 and pick 60. So they weren't feeling like they were truly getting rid of an elite pick at number 60. It was something they could live with. And by getting the 5th rounder back, it made it a little more palatable. He didn't lose a draft choice. He's obviously dropped back a few spots from 60 to whatever that pick in the 5th round is, but he didn't think it was that big of an ask or a release, I should say, of the 2nd round pick. And then I joked with him. I said, and we all know you're going to get that pick back anyway, because you're probably going to trade out of the 1st round and get a 2nd round pick and maybe a 4th rounder. And he kind of laughed and he says, well, we'll see. Well, tell me who's there and we'll see. So the DJ Moore trade, it came down really to his fixed cost. They liked the player, and he wasn't sweating bullets over losing the late 2nd round pick. Which all made sense to me. When I thought about it, it all kind of made sense.
Well, yeah, because of and I've seen that point raised as well. It's what, pick, say, 35 as opposed to 60, right? Like that, the difference between, those two is obvious. And I understand.
Hey, Adam,
that
in the draft, we know that pick say 17 in the 1st round and pick 30 is generally a big difference. Right. It is. So you can imagine going from 35 to 60. There is a big difference in the level of player you're going to get. Now, still, pick 60 is way better than pick, 100 or 150 or 200. But to get a receiver, knowing that he had to upgrade that room, and he said this guy is going to come in and he's immediately our best receiver. Flat out said it. I mean, he's had Shakir in the building for 4 years. He's already signed Josh Palmer to a contract that was pretty good. And he comes right out and says DJ Moore will be the best guy we have. So he's got some conviction about the guy.
All right. So if he's the best guy they have, then obviously he feels it's enough of an upgrade, to that position. Did you get in at all to all the offseason noise and in-season noise, quite frankly, about that group and maybe how he and Joe Brady not that he would necessarily speak for him, but they're in alignment. That's been one of the key buzzwords. What they're going to have at that position, and the feeling that it seems as if they think it's going to be enough with the addition of Moore.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to sign another free agent. I mean, they'd
probably draft somebody though,
but it's possible. I didn't raise that point specifically with him. Would it surprise me that they add a pick in the draft on a receiver? No. Now, will it be first round? Now that they've got DJ Moore in the building, I would be a little bit surprised. Don't forget, they've got Josh Palmer, and they've got Moore, and they've got Shakir under contract for multiple years here going forward. Those are your starting three. I mean, if we're sitting here today, those are the starting three, and they're under contract. So would you like to add a piece to that? Of course. But I would be surprised now if it's a first rounder. I don't know if they'd use the asset on a first rounder. And you also got to mix in, Keon Coleman is still a part of that room. Even Mecole Hardman is technically a part of the room. If they really value him as a punt returner, he's going to make the team as a punt returner / 5 or 6 receiver. And I know I'm missing somebody else. Adam. I've got Shakir, Palmer, Moore, Coleman, Hardman. There's one more. I don't have the depth chart in front of them, but there's somebody else in the mix there too. So I don't think they're going to add certainly a free agent. And I would think maybe they'd take a swing on a receiver, but now I'm starting to think it might be later in the draft.
Yeah, I'm feeling defense if they stay at 26.
Me too.
And I feel like linebacker is going to be extraordinarily important. I mean, others like on Sports Talk Live, John and Vic would disagree with me a little bit. Vic is more thinking edge, that sort of a thing. I feel like Leonard's going to want a linebacker, but there's plenty of time in the lead up to the draft to kind of focus on that and what they might do, and we'll speculate like so many others will.
And that was actually a point that I raised with him because we went over the defensive line and how he told me how he sees it being laid out. And he says you're going to have a nose tackle who won't necessarily be right over the center. Then they're going to have like a defensive tackle in a normal, like a 4-3 front defensive tackle, and then a defensive end. And then you've got the 2 edge guys. That's kind of how he laid it out. So I said to him, but looking at that now, you've kind of got all the guys that you need for those positions. And on the edge, now that you signed Bradley Chubb, and I asked him, who else are the edges? And he said, Rousseau and Hoyt will be edge outside linebackers. So I said to him, okay, so that being said, why would you pick an edge rusher? You've already got 3 guys, 3 good players. I mean, Rousseau, Hoyt, and Chubb, that's a pretty good group of edge rushers, especially in this 3-4 alignment. Plus you got Javon Solomon on the team. And who knows what Landon Jackson's going to be. Why would you take an edge rusher in the first round? You need a linebacker. So he said to me, he goes, okay, I understand your way of thinking. And he goes, you're right. But we do think that Terrell Bernard is going to be very good in this defense, assuming he stays healthy. And they have hope that Dorian Williams is going to be able to step in there and be the other starting linebacker. So then I veered off and I said, well, but you and I both know he's a great athlete and he couldn't cover you or me in a pass route. And he goes, well, yeah, that is true. He said, and here was what was interesting about, we joked about that, but his comment it was very interesting. He said in Sean's defense with Bobby Babich calling the plays, Dorian got caught up in the complexity of it. He said that defense was actually a very complicated defense, and they threw a lot they always had a lot in the game plan every week, and it was a lot for all those guys. And Dorian in particular, he struggled a little bit with all that he needed to know, and he thinks in this defense it's going to be more go be an athlete, and he thinks that's really going to help. So that being said, I think they have faith that Dorian Williams can be the starting inside backer along with Terrell Bernard. But even still, Adam, he's up this year. This is his last year of his contract. They need a linebacker.
I do. I agree.
If I'm them, this is a very good class. All the drafting analysts have said it's a good linebacker class. then why not take one in the first round, get the best one you possibly can? That to me makes all the sense in the world. You got enough edge rushers. You got more than enough edge rushers to play. Would it be nice to add one, a young guy? Sure. But you can do that a little bit later. I would go linebacker in the first round.
And to hear like your take on Dorian or his take on Dorian Williams and the complexity of the defense, that's very interesting inside.
Yeah, it was.
Right.
It was.
And you get a sense of how this defense is going to be different. I mean, you can expand upon that, right? And extrapolate and do all those things. As far as Bernard is concerned, I mean, and I have a ton of respect for Bernard as a player, super athlete, undersized, wear and tear, injury prone, all those things. And beyond that, doesn't he have to say that about the guys he has facing a question like that? Right.
Sure.
I mean, you got to bake some of that in the politics of it, right? And
Absolutely.
keeping everyone fired up and motivated and spurring competition, all of that. When you sift through all of it, I arrive at the same place that you are.
Yeah. I mean, look, Terrell Bernard is a nice player. He played in the 3-4 defense at Baylor too, which will help him transition to this. The problem with him is that he is injury prone. I mean, and I hate to say injury prone, but he's 225 pounds. We've talked about this already. And he's in the middle of that, a car crash on every play. And they've got to find a way to keep him healthy. If they do, the player he was in 2023, that was a pretty good player. He was a turnover machine. He was the captain of the defense. He did a lot of good things. And then really 24, I thought his play slipped a little bit, and he was banged up a little bit in 24. Then 25 was just a bust. He was hurt the whole season. He was hurt from training camp on. He dealt with, I think, 3 different injuries. One of them was in training camp. I think it was a hamstring in training camp. He was never healthy the whole year. So hopefully they're hoping that if he stays healthy, he can return to the player he was in 23.
All right, quickly here, let's talk about the secondary with the addition of D. Alford, who gives him some versatility at cornerback, right? And then the safeties with Gardner-Johnson and Stone. How does that all look? How does it fit together? And based on what he has to say, and what might they still need?
Yeah, so we talked about all 3 of those guys, and we'll start with Alford. What they liked about him is that he told me that the nickel position is going to change in this defense. Taron Johnson was a slot corner / linebacker is what it amounted to in Sean's defense. He was on the field the whole time, and he was responsible. They would put him, as Brandon said, they put him into the B gap to stop running plays. That's not going to be the case in this defense. When you've got 3 defensive linemen plus 2 edge rushers, so you've got a 5-man front, you're not going to need your slot corner to be up close to the line of scrimmage and then go play against the run. They're going to bring D. Alford on the field, I would guess, probably in passing situations. And he said that slot corner is now going to be a cover position for the Bills. It's not going to be a slash linebacker. So Alford will be on the field, maybe 50, 60% of the time in a coverage responsibility primarily. Still has to tackle. I mean, obviously, teams are still going to run, so he has to be able to tackle. They think he can handle that. And then I asked him about Gardner-Johnson. He's going to be the free safety, but they also like that he can play. Him and Cole Bishop, the way Brandon explained it, can both play either free safety deep or come down in the box. And the thing with Gardner-Johnson that also can be done, he can play in the slot. So what I envision happening, D. Alford is like a 185-pound guy. CJ Gardner-Johnson's 210. I think what you're going to see what the Bills do, they're going to rotate. I don't think you're going to see, like in the old days, Poyer and Hyde were just, in the deep secondary the whole time. Whenever Poyer wasn't in the box, they were both deep. You're going to see Gardner-Johnson come into the slot. If they put a tight end in the slot as opposed to a 5'10", 170-pound quick receiver, he's going to come down and be the slot guy. Alford will be off the field, and that's how they're going to play their defense. They're going to match up, I think, a little bit more in this scheme. So that's why they were really attracted to Gardner-Johnson, the versatility that he can play. He's played all those positions before. So that was interesting. Alford, I think they like his ball production. They think he can cover pretty well. But having Gardner-Johnson as the kind of like the backup slot, where if they don't like the matchup they're about to get. And for instance, I even mentioned this today in a story that I wrote for tomorrow. Say A.J. Brown, okay? Say he goes to the Patriots. say they put him in the slot, okay,
Mhm.
which the Patriots would probably do with him. Do you want D. Alford covering him, or do you want CJ Gardner-Johnson? So that's what I'm talking about. If they get a big receiver in the slot, they're going to have the first. In the old days, that was Taron Johnson, man. I mean, it was Taron Johnson had to handle whoever was going to be there. Now they feel like they can do a couple different things. So that was the value of Gardner-Johnson. And then we also talked about, his journey, right? The 5 team, or actually 6 if you count the Ravens, in 7 years. And it was interesting. Again, this is a story that's going to go up tomorrow morning. I asked him, and he said, this was a player that we had to have a face-to-face with. This wasn't a guy where you're negotiating with the agent and then things get close. You get the guy on a Zoom, and he wanted him to come to Buffalo and spend time with not only Brandon, but Brady and whoever else was involved. And they spent the whole day last Thursday. Well, not the whole day, but most of the day, and went to dinner. And they came away from that knowing that, this guy's got a track record. He definitely does. But they saw enough, and they had enough intel on him. Craig Robertson, the new linebacker coach, was his teammate with the Saints when he first broke into the league. John Fox, when he was with Detroit in 23, Gardner-Johnson was there. So there was a little bit of, overlap for that season. So they had some intel about the guy going into it. And when they finally sat down face to face, they were in the belief that for 1 year, $3.5 million for what he can do and the ball production he can give the Bills. Not only the fact that every team he's played on has been a winner, every team he's played on has a winning record, and 6 of them went to the playoffs. 1 year, the Saints had a winning record and didn't make it. So the guy's been around a lot of good football. They thought it was really worth doing, and it's probably going to be a good move for them.
All right,
now, he might be a 1 year guy, and he's out. But for 1 year, they should get something from him.
Well, I mean, that fits into the context of you've got a new defensive coordinator. They're converting this defense into what they put on the field in the fall is not going to be a finished product by any stretch of the imagination. Maybe in terms of the 2026 season, but in terms of what it would ultimately be, ideally, for Jim Leonhard as defensive coordinator. I mean, it's a natural transition. Whenever there's a coaching change, teams go through it. And so you can understand why, with the experience and what he brings to the table, kind of that's the beauty of a 1 year deal, right? Yeah. It's a short term, if things go south in terms of his personality or whatever. But I mean, that might be positive too. You inject some of that that energy into what's going on, right? Yeah. And Diggs brought some of that to the table, right? And it paid big dividends early for them, and then the relationship soured as the years went by. You don't have that threat necessarily in terms of time anyway. There's the potential for it. So I guess my question, and I understand why Brandon would be careful about references to what Sean McDermott would or wouldn't do. So I don't know if he would answer that directly. I'd probably ask him in a couch kind of way. But but if Sean McDermott were still the head coach, would they have made the move to bring in this guy and Gardner-Johnson?
Yeah, and I don't know for sure. I mean, look, they brought in Diggs. I mean, like you mentioned, Diggs is the same kind of guy as Gardner-Johnson, mouthy, and Brandon brought up the point that he was with Steve Smith in Carolina for most of his career, right? Brandon was there almost the whole time that Smith was there. So was Sean for a while. Sean was with Steve Smith. Steve Smith was the ultimate trash talker, right? I mean, I wrote in my story, that was an acquired taste, right? That guy could really get under your skin, and they dealt with him in Carolina for years. And Beane said, we don't mind having a competitive, edgy guy like this. And like you mentioned, Diggs was very similar. So it's not like this is the first volatile player that Beane is bringing on to this team. They've done it before. You're right. I mean, if Sean was still the coach because he's a defensive guy, I would wonder if he'd want to do this. But then again, you look at what this guy can do. And I think even Sean would have come around and said, yeah, on a 1 year deal, this guy could help us. So I would like to think that Sean would have done the same thing, bringing this guy aboard.
All right. Interesting. So FanDuel, presenting sponsor for this show and others on the Believe network. Win total for the Bills. Over 10.5 is a minus 130. They are favorites, as we have said on previous shows, to win the AFC East. I think 10.5 was the number close to this time last year.
Yeah.
10.5 or 11.5, somewhere in there. And there's been a lot of talk and debate among the fan base as to whether or not there's obvious changes that have taken place, but in terms of the caliber of the roster itself, short of the draft, how much more are the Bills really bringing to the table this year? And you've seen that, heard it, or whatever. Where do you fall? I don't know yet where I fall on it, because I don't see, particularly on the defensive side, right, have a sense of how Leonard's sort of more freedom, simplified, attacking style of defense is going to translate, right? I think a lot of the answer lies there. We now have a greater sense of it after your sit down with Beane. Where do you fall on all of that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of unknowns, Adam, right? I mean, the offense, we know. We kind of know what the offense is going to do. They've added a nice piece in Moore, but they really haven't done a whole lot more to the offense. They're going to lose their left guard. They've already lost the left guard, so they have a hole they got to fill. But the offense is the offense is going to be fine. Defense is a lot of unknowns. They're mixing some new pieces into this thing. These players that are coming back have got to learn a new way to play. So, the 10.5 win total, that sounds about right. There's going to be some growing pains on defense, I think. The other thing to look at too is, New England had way more salary cap money than the Bills did. And I look at what they've done. They've made a couple nice moves, but they didn't quite knock it out of the park the way I thought they were going to. Now that could change, because they're still apparently the front runner for A.J. Brown if he gets moved. And if they add A.J. Brown along with Romeo Dobbs, who they've already signed as a free agent, that's gonna look pretty good. And they might be the favorite. I mean, right now the Bills apparently are the favorite in the betting circles. That might push the Patriots ahead of the Bills if they would get someone like A.J. Brown. But we'll see. Right now, I think the Bills look like a playoff team to me, and they will certainly be in the running to win the AFC East. So draft will be important, but so far, given the salary cap space he had to work with, and people will scream at me for defending Beane, I think he's done a pretty good job thus far. The Connor McGovern signing was maybe the most important one of all. And he acknowledged that. He told me on that one, he was fully prepared 12 hours before that deal got done. He was losing both those guys. He did not think he was going to be able to get either one of them back. And he was glad that it came down the way it did. Connor did leave a little bit of money on the table to stay in Buffalo, but he said he did not have a whole lot of faith they were going to get it done, and they did. So he feels really good walking away with Connor McGovern on that contract that he got.
As he should. That's as significant a signing as they've made.
It was. I mean, people will say Bradley Chubb was the most. Was a big one, but no, I think getting Connor McGovern back for Josh Allen, that's a huge get for them.
Before we wrap it up here, the Vandermark situation. What's your sense of what's going to happen there?
Yeah,
the Vikings and an offer sheet, restricted free agent, all of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's for $700,000 more for next year. So I would find it tough for the Bills to match 4.2, but they're on the hook right now for 3.5. So if they really like him, I would say the Bills match it. I mean, Connor McGovern, I don't know. You got to think he's going into the exact situation he's leaving Buffalo. They've got a starting tackle duo that's been together for 5 years. They've started together for 5 years, exactly what the Bills have with Brown and Dawkins. So does he really want to leave Buffalo, players that he knows, a system that even though Cromer's gone, they're going to be doing a lot of the same thing. Does he want to go for $700,000? I don't know. I think it's kind of an interesting call. I guess we'll see, right? Money talks. So we'll see what happens, but it wouldn't shock me if the Bills, I don't know exactly what they truly think of Vandermark. They tell us they like him, but they've also got Tywin Grable, Chase Lunt on the roster that could be the swing tackle. So do you want to invest $4.2 million in a guy? They were going to do 3.5. It's close. I really don't know which way that's going to go, Adam.
All right, so we'll see how it plays out. Sal, great job as always, man. Great insight from Brandon Beane. Again, you can read at the Rochester Democrat and Chronicle, democratandchronicle.com. Sal on Twitter, at Sal Maiorana, Twitter and X, as always. Very insightful article, some other tidbits in there as well that we did not have a chance to get to here on this show. So for Sal Maiorana, I am Adam Benigni, WGRZ TV, still hanging around there. co-hosting Sports Talk Live Buffalo every Monday night at 7 o'clock. We go till June, take a few weeks off, and then come back for the start of the season. So a lot of Sabres talk going on as well with Paul Hamilton of WGR Sports Radio 550. They continue to be a great story. So for Sal Maiorana, I am Adam Benigni. Thanks for being with us here on Believe in Bills, presented by FanDuel.